Hello, everyone, all of you around the world who are digging deeply into your pockets, I know, at this very moment to help for heroes. I hope you are. Anyway, here I am in Hamburg. This is my second and only broadcast from here, except for the one at lunchtime, because tomorrow morning early I shall be leaving for Munich. Anyway, I thought I'd just have a few words with you and tell you what I've been doing. I mean, in case you've forgotten what I told you about Hamburg the last time, it's a busy, thriving town. I remember coming here many years ago, changed a bit since then. It was very badly damaged by the RAF during the war, of course, as indeed most German cities were. Anyway, what have I been doing today? So I had a long sleep because I was, as you know, at lunchtime I was very, very tired indeed after my journey, my early morning from Copenhagen. I miss Copenhagen because I enjoyed it so very much. Various people have asked me about the difficulties of switching from one language and from one currency to another. It is a bit tricky at times, yes. It's been tricky with coming to Scandinavia because each of those three countries have their own currency. And that does make life difficult, a bit difficult anyway. But I enjoyed being there very much. Now, as I walked around Hamburg today, it's extraordinary. I sat down, had a coffee, of course, outside a cafe, and what came to my mind were associations. How I associate things as I see them with things that have happened maybe in the recent past or in the distant past. And I came up with one or two ideas, one or two of them quite funny. I'll tell you one thing. I was at the Little Mermaid, hard to believe, only yesterday. I was at the Little Mermaid in Copenhagen with all those crowds of tourists there. But as I was nearby, I thought, well, I'll buy myself an ice cream. Disgusting. I don't think I can show you the picture, but I mean, I am, well, you know what I am. I'm
Siri not available. Siri not available.
Oh, that's Siri not available. Please be quiet.
Siri not available.
Shush. I've got some photographs here that I took, and I thought you might be interested to see. Let's see now, where are we? Yes. Quite a disgusting picture, really. But I love ice creams. I don't know if you can see that or whether it's too light or whether it's, there you are, that's better. You can probably see that. Just near the Little Mermaid statue having a huge ice cream. Well, I was thinking about that today, and I was thinking about the association of something that happened to me many years ago. I used to live in New York, and in New York City, Manhattan. I worked for various people there, including the late Jim Henson and Duncan Kenworthy, my dear friend. But I remember one day I was out strolling, and it was many years ago, and I remember I was out strolling along 42nd Street. Now, in those days, 42nd Street was a pretty seedy place, full of cocaine pushers and God knows what. It was, and every drug imaginable. And I was walking along, eating an ice cream out of an ice cream tub. And somebody just sent me an email. And I was eating this ice cream out of the cup, walking along in the very hot afternoon sunshine. And there were lots of pretty ropey old cinemas there, which have now been converted, and it's much, much improved, of course. Anyway, it was also, I hasten to add, and very sadly add, that it was a great gathering place for down and out black people who spend a lot of time begging with ice cream ice cream mugs like the one I had. They were holding their hands out. You couldn't deal with all of them. There were so many of them. Anyway, I started, further I got along the road, as I was eating my ice cream, the more guilty I got. So I put my hands in my pockets and I took out some coins. I think it was cents, weren't very much. And I saw these things, and then I saw a man further on, a black man, an Afro-Asian, I suppose it was. And I saw him there, and he was eating from his mug. So I went over to him, and I dropped my handful of coins into his mug and walked on. And as I walked on, I heard him yelling at me from behind, and I turned to look, and he was chasing after me, shaking his fist because he was eating ice cream, and I shoved the handful of coins into his ice cream. Wouldn't you just know? You're not to know, are you? There were so many of them there holding out these empty ice cream cups and plastic mugs, plastic cups. So what could you do? Anyway, he chased me along 42nd Street and was very cross. And I tried to explain, but I don't think he was there to be explained to. So that was quite fun. But I've had many associations over the years. I think back to people I've known and people I've met. And it's funny how the association suddenly comes to light. It suddenly hits you walking along the street, sitting in the bath, listening to the radio, watching the television, whatever. And suddenly some very small thing reminds you. A lot of things have reminded me about habits. My father, for instance, my dear dad. I'll tell you some more stories about him eventually, because there was a very fascinating story which I turned into a play, a radio play, and it was about my father. But I don't want to tell you that today, because that's quite a serious story, and I don't want to be too serious today. And but I don't know. I saw a man today through a barber shop window in Hamburg, and I looked in at him, and in some way he wasn't like my father, having his hair done, but he was sitting there and he did this. I don't know if you can see that, can you? But he was doing this. And that was something my father always did. He used to sit in his chair, and if he was pleased with something, he'd do that. There'd be a big beaming smile on his face. Interesting things like that. And people have made me laugh. When sometimes I hear people screeching out at their kids in the street. It reminds me so much of when I was a kid. Not that I was ever screamed at. I was such an exemplary boy. I might tell you that when I was born, here's a story for you. When I was born in October, and it was a heat wave. It shows you how long ago that is. There was a heat wave, and I was given birth by a midwife on the first floor in our bedroom, my mother and father's bedroom. And she was rather cross, the midwife, because she wanted her lunch, and it was past her lunchtime. So she was trying to get me out quickly. Well, she did. She pulled quite hard, and looked, here's the result, of course. So she pulled me out, and my mother had me for a few minutes. Then the midwife handed me over to my father, and it was so hot. I remember my mother telling me that the windows were open, wide open, and we had old lace curtains up at the windows, and there was hardly a breeze, but my father was standing by the window, and I would not stop bawling. When I came out, I was bawling, shouting my head off. And my father was trying to calm me down, and he couldn't. So he said to my mother, Letty, he said, if this thing doesn't stop yelling soon, I'm going to throw him out the window. So my mother said, please don't do that, Oliver dear, she said, it'll upset the neighbours. Oh dear, fancy throwing, just think what the world would have missed if I'd been thrown out of the window on a hot summer's day. That's an ice cream. Oh, I don't know. I've had a very strange life, really. Very strange life, but I had a lot of good time, a lot of good associations. I wish I could think of all of them now. I did gotten a lot of them again. But when you walk along a street, it's the tiny things, and I'm sure you'll agree, really, it's the tiny things that suddenly make you remember something that happened either a long time ago or even the week before or even the day before. And they can be funny. And they should not be forgotten because they're part of life. They're part of one's subconscious. And I have very happy memories of faces, people. I had an aunt once, a very huge, great big aunt, and she was a very sad soul, and she owed a lot of money. And it's because she gambled. She was very, so I came from a fairly poor family, but she was very poor. They caught up with her. And so the night before, she did something quite dreadful. She got as many coins as she could and put them in the gas meter and put her head in the gas oven and killed herself. Now, I saw a woman in Copenhagen who looked just like my aunt, that aunt. And I saw another woman who looked like another aunt of mine. An aunt of mine who appears in the first of my trilogy of plays called Our Family. The late Wendy Richard played her. And this aunt had a family of 8. And she was in a house in Thorpedale Road in Archway in Islington in London. And on Guy Fawkes in 1945, dear Mr. Goering, this part of the world, decided to drop a V2 rocket on the house. And the entire family were killed except my aunt. Onto the rubble, to the air. And for 20 years after that, they were still taking little bits of glass out of her face. But I saw a woman who looked just like her, complete with scars, the other day, and it is extraordinary how these people come to life. And I've seen my brother Stan, who I'm desperately fond of. He's older than me. He's a dreadful coward, just like my partner David. Dreadful coward. And when I was young, we were both at school, and it was in the war. My mother said he's got to go to the dentist. And so she said, you'll have to go with him because I can't go with him. And I said, I'm younger than him. I don't want to go to the dentist with him because he's a coward. She said, you must take him. I went with my brother to the dentist. And we waited and waited and waited. And he was he had a school cap, and he kept biting this school cap, the rim of the school cap. He was so nervous. And then eventually he was called in, but I wasn't allowed to go in there. Well, the other people, there were about 2 or 3 other people in the waiting room. And I waited outside, and I wondered what was going on. I was looking at some dreadful magazine that was about 25 years old in the waiting room. And suddenly I heard my brother yelling out, no, no, ah! "Ah!" And everybody in the thing was absolutely terrified because it was so loud and screaming, "Oh, no, 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 no." Well, the other two people got up and walked out and left me there. Well, the next thing I knew was eventually the door was swung open by the dentist, and he came out and he pushed my brother out towards me. He said, "I haven't even touched him." So, I mean, I remember things like that. But I love him because we spend a lot of our young days together during the war in Anderson. And being in Germany like this is it's a very odd feeling, because I wonder if they were sitting, they must have been sitting in air raid shelters as well as we were. But I spent so much of my life in an air raid shelter. Anyway, I am waffling on a bit, aren't I? But I just wanted to bring to your attention something that you might like to think about in some of your more docile moments when you can't think of anything really positive. Just think of associations. When you're walking along the road, you see somebody, oh, he reminds me of my Uncle Alf or whoever. And these things happen. And I've thought of that when I've been on this tour, traveling around and thinking that people are very much alike. It's not only currency that's alike, that's different. It's people are different, but they not only in some ways resemble people and somebody you know, but they are there for us to associate with somebody in our own mind. And I found that wherever I've been, right up to almost the North Pole, I think that I've done all that. And a week today, I shall be home, I hope, if I drive carefully. And there it is. Anyway, I won't waffle on anymore. But that's just more food for thought. I'm on this long trip, and I'm thinking about that, why I'm doing this, and hoping that you're all not letting me down and putting your hands in your pockets. I know I go on about it all the time, but that's what I'm here for. Please put your hands in your pockets. And even when I'm giving, give, give, give. Those boys do deserve it. Those girls deserve it. All of them deserve it. So don't let me down, will you? So the next time I talk to you, now I don't know, it's a long journey from Hamburg to Munich. But I don't know if I shall be able to get there by the 2:00 broadcast. I shall do my best, but I don't want to break my neck. So if I'm late, you'll forgive me, won't you? But I'll certainly be there for the 7 p.m. broadcast, because tomorrow night, and the day after, I shall be meeting my friend Frank, one of the families that I'm so fond of, who live in Gauting in Munich. So until we meet again, whenever it is, either at lunchtime tomorrow, I should be leaving here very early in the morning, I'll say goodnight to you. And remember that poor man with the coins in his ice cream. He must have been very cross with me. Would you have been? You bet your bottom dollar you would have been. Good night.